Hi everyone and welcome back again. So today I want to talk about my reading journal. So far I have been using this one. I started in 2020, I used it throughout 2021 and also 2022. And now it's entirely full and I have bought a new one. This one is from Notebook Therapy. I really love their notebooks. It's not sponsored or anything, but they have pretty notebooks and they also of good quality. So this one is the limited edition with the Tory gates. I will show you how I'm using it and I will do a flip through through this one. So let's start with the old journal first. I started this journal with the idea of keeping it as a bullet journal, but I realized that bullet journaling is just not for me. I tried to use it for a week and then I stopped and then came back to it again, and so the whole idea of bullet journaling just didn't work out. I didn't use it daily and I just forget adding the information in it. And yeah, like I showed you in my previous video, I just like using small notebooks for daily planning that I can take with me everywhere. So I started out as a bullet journal, and here's some personal information, so that's why it's in here. Yeah, and at first it was just that bullet journal. Then I moved on to using it as a language learning journal for planning for my language learning, but again it didn't work out because I made a planning, but then I didn't come back to it or didn't stick to it. So yeah, it wasn't efficient for me. It was just not working. So then I started using it as a reading journal, and that's something that I stick to. I'm still using it. I love the idea of organize my books this way. I'm also using Goodreads to organize my books and my reading. So you can follow me on Goodreads. But I do have a thing for journals. I do have a thing for like paper and just physically writing everything down and not just keeping everything online, because I'm always thinking like, well, you cannot trust technology too much. If something happens to Goodreads or I don't have access to internet at some point, I cannot access all the readings that I've done, all the books that I have organized there. So that's why I also like to have a journal for it. And also I think I do review my books on Goodreads. However, sometimes you want to write something personal about a book or some personal thoughts and ideas that you don't want to put online, and for that I use an actual journal. Yeah, so in here I wrote down that I started reading War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy in November 2020, but then I stopped. So I want to pick it up again, so I made a note for myself. This was from my Japanese learning notes, and here I didn't really use this key page, the index page. Then I started at first using it as a bullet journal, so I made this kind of list that I never really used. The same goes for my language learning goals that I didn't really came back to. So then I tried to use it as a habit tracker again. It just didn't work out for me. I wasn't using it daily. Then you cannot really track everything. This was the language learning part. I tried to write down every day a kanji and learn a kanji. Now I already have learned all of this kanji, so that worked out, but I didn't learn it this way and I didn't keep up with it. So yeah, it's the whole bullet journal idea. It sounds very nice, but it just doesn't work for me. And this was the language learning bullet journal idea. Again, I made some plans and never came back to it. So here starts the reading journal in 2020. I made a reading wish list of books that I wanted to buy and to read. So far I haven't read everything, but I did read Gyu by Junji Ito, so I can cross this one out. But yeah, I just made a list of books that I wanted to read. The Haunting of Hill House, I have also read this one, so I need to come back to this list. But I love making a reading list of books that I want to read in the near future, and then I just write everywhere in this list. So yeah, this is one of them. And then what I do is with every book, I have one page. I write down the book that I'm reading, the author of the book. Also give a rating here in the upper right page, and then I write down when I start reading it, when I finished it, and a small summary or just my ideas about the book. And I add some stickers that have something to do with the book, if I can find a sticker that has something to do with the plot of the book. So yeah, this is all from 2020. I've read some nice books, but you can see my yearly end of the year wrap up, and I think my favorites of 2020 video. So yeah, you can see that, but this is just my personal notes on all of those books. And I also try to track down the genres that I read in. Again, I'm not good at tracking things, so I stopped using it after a month or so. And most of the books that I read are fiction, in the genre of fiction. I read now a little bit more non-fiction, but still most of it is fiction or non-fiction for my school. But I do not add school books to my reading journal because I do not finish them from cover to cover. So this is only books that I read for pleasure. I do not read a lot of manga. Self-help books, again, not my thing. So mostly it's fiction, and then horror fiction, thriller, Japanese literature, Russian literature. I try to read that more again. So this list doesn't give you a lot of information, and again, I stopped tracking it this way. Then I started doing this kind of thing. For every month I made this like monthly page where I put in the month, some stickers, a month overview, and then also a quote from a favorite writer or from the writer that I was reading that month. So in here we have a quote from Tolkien, which says, "All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." I really like that quote. And then we have here everything that I have started reading in September. This is a book that I put in here, but I never really finished it because it's on an art book about the painter Hokusai, Japanese woodblock painter, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I started reading this art book. However, an art book you just flip through it, you read it, but you never really finish it most of the time from cover to cover. So I never filled this page further. And I decided from then that I wouldn't put art books in here as well, just only like novels and yeah, books that I really read from cover to cover. And then I tried also to keep up with every show and movie that I watch, but again I stopped using this. So this is all just for my readings and my books. So yeah, I can show you like a flip through how I fill this out, and I really like doing this because now I can just go back and see if I have read the book. Most of the times I don't forget if I have read or not read the book, but yeah, it's sometimes nice to flip through it and see what I was reading at the time and what my thoughts were on it, especially if I'm reading a book for the second time. I just can come back and see if I'm still agreeing with what I have written. So here 2021 starts, and I did the same thing in 2021. So a monthly page with a quote from a writer, and yeah, all the books that I've read. And here we have a quote from Dostoevsky from the book Demons. And it says, "Если хочешь победить весь мир, победи себя." So it means if you want to win over the world or have victory over the world, you have to have victory over yourself first. Which is a nice way of explaining the fact that you have to work on yourself first to make the world better. Yeah, in February I had a quote from Shirley Jackson. So long as you write it away regularly, nothing can really hurt you. I think this is true. That's why we want to keep journals, I think. At least people that are watching this channel and are interested in journal videos like me. I think we want to keep journals to kind of empty our minds. So put our thoughts, ideas, opinions into the paper and write away. So yeah, that's the reason for me why I like keeping journals, and also it's kind of a small history of your life as well, of what I read or what I do in a day. That's where my love for journals come from. Yeah, so this is the rest of the journal. Yeah, it's pretty much the same every time. We have the month overview with a quote and then all the books. This was our great book, Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. I really, really loved it. It was so, it's a very spiritual book, but also philosophical. It has quite suspenseful storyline. So you're following Siddhartha and how he tried to discover himself and to discover Buddha. Yeah, so I really enjoyed it, and there are a lot of great quotes in the book, a lot of great information that you can use even in your daily life. So kind of a self-help book, but then with a good storyline. Yeah, and That Mountain by Donny H.R. is about a true story about the Dyatlov Pass in Russia, where some university students vanished and later were found in very particular situation, and until today it's not very clear what happened to them. So I enjoyed reading this book, which gave a theory about what might have happened to them. So also a very interesting one if you like non-fiction. Moving on, then I have again a random TBR list of books. Billy Summers from Stephen King. I haven't read that one yet. Thomas Ligotti, Conspiracy Against the Human Race. It's a philosophical book. Again, non-fiction, I think. And yeah, I want to read it for a very long time, but so far I haven't read it. Underground by Haruki Murakami, also non-fiction. I hope to read it next year. Return of the King by Tolkien. I hope to read it this year. I finished the first two books, The Fellowship and what's the second book? Of course, The Two Towers. So now I only have to read The Return of the King, and I hope to finish it before the end of the year. And John Stuart Mill on Liberty is a philosophical book. I started it but never finished it, so I have to come back to it. But I like to make this kind of TBR list and then look at it someday and see what I have read and what I have not read. So these dates or months, yeah, it didn't work out to read it during those months. Then I read in September 2021 The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I really wanted to read this book for a long time because of Gilmore Girls. It was mentioned there, I think, multiple times. And it's like a very, I think, popular book, a very well-known book. So I finally read it. And unfortunately, first I gave it 4 stars, but then I moved it back to 3.5 star. But I would say for now, yeah, I think it's 3 stars for me. It was quite an average book for me. It wasn't great. It wasn't what I had expected from it, but it was also not a bad book, so not a terrible book. So yeah, 3 stars. I think that's an honest review from me. Then yeah, here we have John Stuart Mill on Liberty. I started it, but then I stopped reading it. So when I start again, I will come back to this page. The same goes for Albert Camus, The The Plague. I have read this book, but again, I gave it 2 stars. I know that it's a very well loved book and a lot of people speak very highly of it, but when I was reading it, I just didn't enjoy it at all. So yeah, again, a book that I really wanted to read for a long time and that a lot of people speak very highly of, but for me it just didn't work out. And I like the Bell Jar more than I like The Plague, but yeah, it's a shame. Maybe I didn't understand it, but it wasn't for me. Then The Haunting of Hill House. This was a pleasant surprise. I gave it 4 stars, but actually it's almost 5 stars. I mean, it was great. Very different from the TV show, if you know the TV show, which is also really, really good. But the book is totally different story. Still, I enjoyed it a lot. And Audition by Ryu Murakami. Really nice book if you want to read something during the spooky month or just during November. I would highly recommend this book. It's a thriller, a psychological thriller, and also they say it's horror, but I don't find it like really horror. It's more psychological thriller, but it's a very nice story. Then these 2 books are quite strange as well. The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea by Yukio Mishima. Very unsettling. Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars because it's beautifully written. However, it has some subjects in it that are quite heavy, and also it makes you feel very uncomfortable. And then Moshi Moshi by Banana Yoshimoto. This is a very nice book to read. It's about grief and moving on after losing a loved one. And it's very well written, very beautiful. I had a lot of emotions when I was reading this book. And this is the second book that I've read from Banana Yoshimoto. The first one was Kitchen, and I didn't like Kitchen. So I was quite disappointed because I wanted to read something from her. And again, it's a very well-loved writer in Japan. But for me, Kitchen didn't work out. So I gave her another chance and read Moshi Moshi. And this one was a very pleasant surprise. So yeah, I would recommend it. Then we have Oh Jun Hee. I probably are not pronouncing this name correctly. I'm sorry. The Bird. This is also a very unsettling, uncomfortable book about a time in Korea. I didn't write down which time, but I think it was somewhere in the 80s or in the 90s. Where Korea was striving towards industrialization, and more and more people moved to larger city to find jobs. And this is about 2 children that, because of their parents trying to find jobs and work all the time, were neglected. And it's a very sad, unsettling story about 2 children, a very young age, that have to figure out things for themselves, and eventually that just doesn't work out, of course, because they're just too young, and horrible things start to happen to them. I would recommend it, but it's very sad, very tragic, and it leaves you with a depressing feeling. That's why I gave it 3 stars. It's well written, but it's also quite hard to read. Then we have here Tolkien, The Two Towers. So yeah, like I said, I only have to read The Return of the King, and then I finally have read the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I want to do like for more than 10 years, I think. The Penguin Book of Hell. I'm still reading it. It takes me a long while, but it's a non-fiction philosophical history book. It's about all kinds of way that people described hell in the Bible, in Dante's Inferno, and all other texts that describe hell over the years. So yeah, it's not something that you read daily, but I want to finish it as soon as possible because I'm reading it for more than a year now, almost more than a year now. Let me see if I find some other special books. Oh, The Books of Blood by Clive Barker. It's a short story collection. Again, I would really highly recommend this if you like reading horror and thriller short stories, which I love to do. These are some original, even sometimes scary horror stories. I find it very hard to find books that really scare me or short stories that really scare me, but in here there were a couple that came close to it. And also they were just original and fun to read, so I would suggest this book if you like short stories. I finally read Carrie by Stephen King. It is his first published book. I gave it 3.5 stars. It wasn't great, but it was okay, and it's his first book that he has published. It's a very short book, and it, of course, the movie that is made from it is quite famous. Unfortunately, I didn't like the movie, but I liked the book better than the movie. So yeah, I wanted to read it because I want to read all Stephen King books, and it was quite strange that I have not read his first published book. So finally I did it in 2022. Then let me see what we have. The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Very beautiful. It's non-fiction, it's his essays, and it talks about politics, history, but of course race issues. Very well written, beautiful, and yeah, it was a pleasure to read it, so highly recommend it as well. Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. This is the second book from her. It's even weirder than the first one. The first one, the convenience store woman. Yeah, that one was pretty good, I think. I did enjoy it. This one was really weird. It started out strong. I enjoyed it. But the ending was too absurd, and yeah, that didn't really speak to me. I didn't really enjoy an ending that was just too far-fetched. However, the beginning and the middle part of the book is really good, so yeah, I still would recommend it, and I'm looking forward to read her other books because I still think it's an interesting writer. I have also read The Catcher in the Rye. Yeah, it was average for me. I think I would have loved this book more when I was in my teenage years, but now it was just average. It was not great. I think it was too repetitive for me. But yeah, I finally read it. It's a classic as well. And now I'm currently reading Game of Thrones, which is the first book of the series A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin, and so far I really enjoy it. It's so good. It's even better than the TV show. I like the TV show, however, the book has beautiful descriptions. The characters are very lively, very interesting even. I think so. There are a lot of characters, and I think it's very difficult to write a book with so many characters and still make them interesting and give them opinion, voices, and make them really real. And I think George Martin does that very good. So far it's a pleasure to read it, and I hope to finish it soon, and next year to keep on reading this series because as you know, they're quite big books, and so far the series is not done yet. He hasn't written the final book, so I cannot finish the series, but I can read the books that are out now. And I understand from the latest news that his final book will be very large, and maybe even he will need to write 2 more books to finish the series. But yeah, we shall see. I finished Gyo by Junji Ito in September. Pretty interesting, a little bit weird, like all his manga. It's interesting but weird. And right now I'm also reading The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. I think it's going to be an average read for me. It's not great, it's not terrible. I do enjoy it, but it's still missing something for me. So yeah, I think it's going to be 3 stars, but I'm not finished yet, so maybe at the end there will be some plot twist that I would really enjoy and give it more stars, who knows. Then I have also read Bunny by Mona Awad. It was a very popular book on Goodreads, but also on TikTok, and I wanted to try it out. And yeah, it was pretty good. Again, it was this kind of book that started out pretty strong, but then at the end was too weird, too absurd, and made it a little bit too much unbelievable. But you have an unreliable character in here. The main character is very unreliable. You don't know if she's just crazy or something more is going on, and that makes it interesting. I do like this kind of main characters. So yeah, I did enjoy reading it. And I also have read The Crucible by Arthur Miller. It's a play. It's the first time that I've read the play, and it's very, very interesting. I liked it a lot. I gave it 5 stars, so yeah, I really enjoyed reading it. It's a very short book, so you can finish it, I think, in one sitting. I have read it in 7 days, but yeah, you can finish it very quickly. And right now I'm also reading On Anarchism by Noam Chomsky. It's again non-fiction, philosophical, and kind of essays on certain subjects like politics, power. Very interesting if you're into philosophy. So yeah, I hope to finish it this week. Then I have again a list of books. Books to read in a lifetime. This was inspired by a list on the internet of I think 100 books that you have to read in your lifetime, and also on the list of Rory Gilmore from Gilmore Girls. As you can see, most of the books I haven't read so far, but yeah, I like to keep this kind of list, so I go back to it and see if I have read them, or to find some inspiration. And then something that I really like about this journal is my Stephen King bookshelf. I don't know if you can see it right, but yeah, I made this bookshelf with all the books from Stephen King. Now, these are not all the books because I missed some, I think, and he also have written 2 more books. Billy Summers is not on here, and his newest is Fairy Tale. It's also not on here. Not in here, but yeah, I try to see how many books I've read from him, and I color them in when I finish them. And as you can see, they're in a chronological order, most of them. Here at the ending we have some short story collections, so it's in a different order, but this is mostly chronological. And yeah, I try to read a lot of his earlier work. And I have read almost nothing of course, of the Dark Tower. I've never read a Dark Tower book, but in here, in this time period, I have read nothing from him. And then I have read a lot of his newer books, like The Institute, Later, Gwendy's Button books. I really like this one, Mr. Mercedes, and his his short story collections. And because I love short stories, I've read a lot of his short story collections, but still not all. The man has written a lot of books, so yeah, I'm still working on it. And then I have some genres that I had discovered or just wanted to write down, and my reread list. So these are books that I really want to reread in the near future. It's just 3 books so far. Do No Harm by Henry Marsh. I have read this one in Dutch, I think more than 5 years ago. It's one of my favorite non-fiction medical books, and I want to read it in English, in the original language. Also Jane Eyre, one of my favorite books of all time. I have read it when I was, I think, 13, 14 years old in Dutch, and I want to reread it in English. And the same goes for The Hobbit. I have read The Hobbit in Dutch, I think, more than 5 times, 7 times, but never in English. So yeah, those are the books that I want to reread in their original language. And then we have again another list of books. that I wanted to read in 2020, and then it became 2021, and I'm still working on this list until I think 2023. I hopefully I can cross this one out at the end of this year, The Lord of the Rings, when I finish the last book, The Stand by Stephen King. It's a very long book, so yeah, I want to start reading it, but I need to find the right time. Demons by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Again, a very long book, and I want to read it in Russian, so it will take me quite a while. The same goes for Anna Karenina. Dracula, I also want to read it this year, so hopefully I can cross this one out as well. But yeah, A Picture of Dorian Gray is also a very long time on my reading list, but I just can't come around and start reading it. Unfortunately, every time I'm reading something else, but I really want to read this one because it's a gothic, like, horror story, and because I love horror stories, it's a classic. I mean, it's a classic horror story, so I need to finally start reading it. And then, of course, number one, War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I mean, it's gigantic, this book, and I want to read it in Russian as well. So hopefully next year, in 2023, I will finally finish it. And the same goes for Haruki Murakami 1Q84. It's more than 1,000 pages. So yeah, most of his books are very long, and I just try to find the right moment to start reading them. Then we have a travel bucket list, YouTube information list, some other book lists and TV shows, not too important. So this is everything from the latest journal, and now I started a new reading journal. I'm not going to do everything that I've done in the previous journal, so this is going to be a little bit different. However, most of my reading organization stays the same. I'm still using Goodreads, and then writing down all the books in here as well, and still using one page per book. So yeah, this is the new journal. And in here we have my end of the year TBR. I think I'm going to make a video about it and tell you a little bit more about these books. But like I mentioned before, I think you already know what books I want to finish at the end of the year. The Return of the King by Tolkien. Also Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Then I wanted to read The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. I wanted to read it for Halloween. However, I ordered it and it came later, so the Halloween is already over. But yeah, maybe I will read it. I don't know. And then The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Like I said, it has been on my list for so long. And then Franz Kafka, The Metamorphosis. I have finished it, so that's why it's filled in. I read it in one day, and it's quite a good book. It's my first Franz Kafka book, and I really enjoyed it. Then currently reading, I already told you this one, so yeah. Again, a list. I like making lists. And then we have the books that I already have started reading when I started this journal. So Spiral by Koji Suzuki. It's the second book from the Ring series. I love reading these books. They're so good. Very suspenseful, interesting. Then a Dutch book about why reading is important. So it's non-fiction. It was an average read. A lot of things I already knew that the author described. And The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Yeah, very interesting. So the rest I still have to fill out, of course. But we will go to the end of the reading journal. And in here I have, again, a Stephen King bookshelf library. And in here I think I have all the books I googled a list of all of his books chronologically. It took me a while to make this page. However, I think it's worth it, and I still because I want to continue on reading all of his books and fill them in. On the lowest shelf we have all of his short story collections and also some non-fiction that he has written, and the rest is all chronological, his novels. And yeah, I really liked making this page. It took me a while, but it was a lot of fun. And then we have again the great TBR, a very large list of all the books that I want to read in the near future. And when I say near future, I could mean years and years, and because it's quite a long list, as you can see. And this time I took inspiration for my early list, of course, and from my bookshelves. But I also found a video online on YouTube about it was called The Iceberg of Disturbing Books, because I'm still looking for books that will be as good as The House of Leaves by Marta. I just love that book. It was very disturbing, it was very good, and I'm still looking for books just like that. So I watched this video about the most disturbing books of all time, and I took some inspiration from it. So not all the books that this person mentions in this video are on here, and not all the books that are on here are in his video, but I will list his video down below so you can check out for yourself if you like reading uncomfortable, disturbing, weird books like I am. But we have other books in here as well that are not on his list. And let me see, like The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. I love Jane Eyre, of course, and I just want to read more of Charlotte. But also Circe by Madeline Miller. I hear a lot of good things about it. Understanding Power by Noam Chomsky. Again, philosophical books. Cursed Bunny, it's a short story collection from a Korean writer, and yeah, a horror short story. So yeah, it's also something that is on my wish list. So it's quite a long list, but yeah, hopefully I could finish some books next year from this list. So yeah, this is the end of my newest reading journal. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if you have a reading journal yourself, if you use Goodreads or like Excel or something else to organize your books and your readings. But I like to use both. Goodreads because it's fast and easy, but also a journal because it's very nice to keep a journal. So until next time, and have a nice day. Goodbye.